Hi everyone, we are very excited to have our episode 2 of the Raymond Wood podcast. A big thank you to everyone who listened in for our first episode with Greg Brown. It was such a huge success, and a big thank you from Greg again. He passed on as thank you to me this week, and he said he loved listening to it back. We are very excited today. We've got Andrea Bulow with us, and Andrea is the breath performance coach, and we are going to get straight into it. Before we even do any intro with Andrea about who she is and where she's come from, but I'll just give you a little bit of a backstory on how I met Andrea. So I met Andrea quite a few weeks ago now at an event, and it was quite evident to me that we had a master in the room of breathing. And it was something that excited me because we spoke about how we can improve athletic performance. So, hello, Andrea. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very well. Thank you for joining us today. Now, we've brought you in because we want to speak about the improvements that we can make from an athletic performance. And some of the things that we spoke about was the benefits on how it can help improve an athlete's career or journey. Do you want to just maybe touch on that a little bit for us?
Yes, so many things. So with breath work, obviously you can do breath work that activates the system or relaxes the system, and specifically for athletes would be something more of a relaxation state because they're already active enough, you know, on the field and off the field. So having them getting to that relaxation state will bring out a lot of amazing other things as well to help them in their athletic performance.
Awesome. Now, in my background, coaching in professional football, we were always looking for the 1% or the 0.5%. If we could just improve a player's journey by 1%, would be a huge gain. And obviously, I've done a lot of reading and a lot of research since I met you about the effects of breath work. And it was always in and around 15 to 20%. Wasn't just people's subjective feedback, it was objective data. Like there was a study done at the IIS. There was also a study done at Loughborough University in the UK. So can you just maybe cover some of those areas and topics on how we can improve up to 15 to 20% with the breath work?
So there's lots of things like, so if you're talking about data, you're talking about increased lung capacity as well, which if you're running around, if you can control your breathing, obviously you're not going to get gassed as quick. You can also help like stuff like empowerment, confidence levels. They're not going to get as stressed. They're not going to be as anxious. So, you know, if you're, I don't know, any position, like even in basketball, right? You're going to go up, take that layup, something like that. Being able to be in a good mindset, to have that confidence. You know, you've got stress from your team, stress from your players, your parents, your coaches, everything. That's a lot of pressure. So if athletes can control their breathing through those types of things, will really, really help them in that capacity.
That's amazing. Like one of the big things in football you probably may be aware of is, especially in cup competitions like World Cups, Champions Leagues, if a game is tied, at the end of the game it goes to penalties. Normally the team or the players that can actually hold it together and stay focused and lower stress levels in them environments are the ones who are successful. And for me, it used to always blow me away that the difference between winning and losing could just be the ones who could lower the stress level at the right point. And it's really funny, like my team, Liverpool Football Club, they haven't lost on penalty kicks in over 4 years. And that's because they employed someone to come in and help them with penalty kicks. And one of the interesting studies that I found was how they actually helped them with the penalty kicks. One of the areas was breathing and being able to lower stress levels. So how would you implement that in regards to, like, if you had an athlete and we wanted to teach them how to lower that stress level, but we know we've only got a 2 or a 3 minute window, would it be something as simple as just follow this breathing technique? Could you build on that a little bit for our listeners?
So there's so many you can do. I mean, you can go right down into deep trauma as well if you want, or you can just, like you said, implement something for 2 or 3 minutes. If it was something like, you know, a tennis player, for example, that, you know, how they have their breaks in between their sets or whatever, and they need to go out. Yeah. Or even their games as well, they have that couple of minute break. So nasal breathing is really good. So once you start breathing through your nose, obviously when people get really anxious, they're always breathing through their mouth. So even just something breathing through the nose, and you can do different, like you can go up and down for 6, for 4 or whatever, in through one nostril, out through another nostril. That's really helpful as well. And even just like closing down the eyes and coming back to that sense of presence, like it's okay, I'm here, I'm present in what's going on and not fixating on the end result or whatever that they've got to do and getting super like stressed out about it. They can just bring themselves back into their body and go, okay, and then move on from there.
So when we talk about, because I'm a real idiot when it comes to this, so nasal breathing, it's literally mouth closed, just breathing in and out of your nose just to control it.
Yeah.
And then maybe I'm going off on a tangent, but I've been listening and I seem to be hearing a lot of stuff, and I don't know if this has anything to do with breathing, but about mouth taping.
Yeah.
What's the go with mouth taping? Because I see a lot of stuff. Is it good? Is it not good? And it's like,
so yeah, a lot of people actually, I can't remember like off the top of my head, but I know a lot of people do it, and there's a lot of YouTubers out there going on about it. So it's different. So like this dates back to like even African tribes and stuff like that, that when the women would literally, the kids would be like the babies, for example, breathing through their mouth, and they go around and actually close their mouths to start activating the nasal breathing. And what actually happens is over time, your nasal passages and your mouth and your lungs and everything, they actually develop differently depending how you breathe. So what people try and do is tape their mouth shut to only breathe through their nose. Enhances a better sleep. It helps incorporate like the nasal passages. Like so, people like there's been lots of studies around this as well. Like people who have blocked nose, like as well, breathing through your nose will help open it up over time. So then the nasal passages get stronger, like hay fever, asthma, like all these things as well. Yeah. So it's a thing. I haven't done it, but I do try and like reduces snoring and all that other stuff as well, because a lot of people, I don't know if you know, but a lot of people who are snorers breathe through their mouth, and then closing their mouth down, obviously breathing through their nose reduces the snoring as well. So there's so many things to it. Yeah.
See, I like this straight away. So I'm thinking that makes complete sense to me from a coaching point of view, that the more you do something, the stronger you're going to get at it. So it's going to build up those nasal passages. And also one of the big things, and it was one of the areas that we did used to touch on when I used to work back in the Premier League, was sleep and how important sleep is. And I've been told over the years I am a snorer. And I know it affects sleep, because some nights you wake up in the middle of the night and you're like, why am I awake? And it's probably because I'm snoring the house down. So the benefits of not snoring anymore as well could be a game changer, because we know the effects of having a good night's sleep can have on athletic performance. So I even think talking about this now, this could be more than 15%. And one of the reasons we got you to come on is because we're trying to constantly add value to one of our main programs, which is the Professional Player Pathway. And that's where we teach families and boys and girls who aspire to play professional football, one, how to get onto that pathway, but what are the right things they should be doing along that pathway. And this is one of them. So I just don't know if I'm going to like the idea of taping my mouth closed and trying to go to sleep. If I wake up in the middle of the night, it sounds quite scary.
Yeah, a bit awkward.
Now, one of the other things as well we spoke about was around like empowerment and confidence and the benefits of that. How could you relate that back in a little bit more, or build on that a bit more for our listeners?
Again, it's back to the breath. So if you can control your breathing, you can control your mindset a lot better, especially with massive stresses that athletes come across. Like I mentioned before, all those external factors, as well as the internal factors. Like there's so much stress from everybody else, but then there's stress on yourself, and people put that on themselves. So being able to use breath work, and it's like you said, it's like anything. Obviously, these guys train every day, doing something like breath work every day. It doesn't have to be really intense breath work, but just having like 5 minutes to take that out of your day. I do something called a primer breath in the morning, and it's an activated breath, but it brings you back into your body and it centers you. So to be able to build on that basically, and then having that, like you said, that empowerment and that confidence. So if they do get put under those stresses in the game, it's being empowered because you're kind of in control, if that makes sense. Yeah. So if you're in control of your breath, it slows you down. Then you're in control of your mindset, and then it's like it works with that, as opposed to just being all up in your head. And then the more you're in your head, the less you breathe, and then you just get fixated on all these other things, and you're not in your body as best as you should be. So breathing better, especially if you can practice that, like have a set practice, will help you like with that empowerment, like and confidence and all those things. Is it?
Yeah. I completely relate that back into the athlete's journey about like repetition.
Yeah.
You've got to practice it more. It was funny for the listeners listening when I first met Andrea, and we were in a room of entrepreneurs and successful business people, And it's all around how we can help better build our businesses, but help our clients and customers. And Andrea got put on the spot, and she got asked if she could do a breathing exercise with everyone. And I think it went for like a minute. And I remember doing it. It was middle of the afternoon. We just had lunch. And normally I have that slump where I'm like falling asleep in a room and I'm not switched on. And talking about being present and focused. And we done this 1 minute breath work with Andrea. And it was only in the evening, I just seemed to discover that the whole afternoon I didn't slump, I didn't tire. And I was like, this is genuine, this is legit.
Yeah, so that one I actually did was mouth breathing. So that's an activation one, which is different to what we've been talking about in the relaxation state. This one activates you and you're like, oh, and like you feel it for sure. Yeah. And that was only a portion of it too. That was only like half. So I could have actually built on that a lot more, but in a minute you can't do that much. So
it's funny, it's like obviously something we don't condone with the younger players who are under 16, but there's a lot of research and studies into the effects of caffeine. And when I first researched caffeine, everyone thinks, it gives you a boost of energy. And actually, when you actually study caffeine and what it does, it actually helps you focus and maintain focus longer. And all of a sudden, I've now done this 1 minute activation with you in the room with the Iconic group. And I was like, wow, I don't need a coffee anymore. I could just do this every day. But
it's different as well because the caffeine can sometimes be counterproductive because it can bring on anxiety. Yeah. Because it gives you those, jitters and stuff, and it focuses you, but it's a different focus. It's more in your head and not like your body. Like you're not really awake. Like you're just kind of like wired, if that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
So we were speaking a little bit about the physical benefits and about improving sleep, which is really interesting. And we obviously touched on about like the mouth taping and that, but just without doing mouth taping techniques, how can we improve sleep just through breathing every day correctly?
So if you, like I said before, so if you do breath work every day or some breathing techniques every day, you'll get used to that. It's like going to the gym every day, right? Your body gets used to that lactic acid. It gets used to putting your muscles under stress, the tearing of your muscles and all that sort of stuff. So with breathing, like say, for example, if you're doing breath work, like if you're doing holds, so you might do, a lot of people put them on the spot. They probably can't hold their breath for 30 seconds or a minute. But if you do breathing, you can actually increase your lung capacity and then you can hold your breath for longer periods of time. And that overall, like you said, like the breath work that we did or the breathing we did, on the speaker course was an activation one. So you can do that or you can do a relaxation one, and just building that up over time, your overall anxiety levels will be lower. So then naturally when you go to sleep, it's like, not having caffeine late in the afternoon. It's like not looking at those blue lights and stuff like that before you go to sleep. It's the same principle. So if you do breathing every day, it'll naturally bring your levels down, so then you can go to sleep better and you can go straight into that deep REM that you need. Yeah.
That's amazing. Guys, we're just about to go to a break and we're just going to speak to you on our advert in and around our Pro Player Pathway. But a big thank you to the first part of the show with Andrea, and we're going to be back with you in the next couple of minutes.
Would you one day like to be a professional football player? Would you like to be part of our Pro Player Pathway? What is the Pro Player Pathway? It's an opportunity for all Australian football players aged between 10 and 23 who want to join us to become the next professional football player. On the Pro Player Pathway, you get to join me and my team free of charge to an event all around Australia. When you join me, we're going to teach you the secrets of football in Europe. And one day, maybe, you could be gracing the Champions League final. Guys, over the next 12 months, we're going to be coming around all the major cities of Australia. And when we come around all the major cities, we're going to be running our free events everywhere we go. So guys, what have you got to lose? Nothing. It's a free event. It's for boys and girls aged 10 to 23. And I'm going to teach you the secrets of becoming a top European football player. Oh, and one final thing. We're going to be giving away 20 scholarships to join me on this program of a lifetime.
Hi everyone, this is Raymond Wood on the Raymond Wood podcast. Thank you for having a little look at our advertisement, and hopefully that Pro Player Pathway can push you onto your journey. So if you are interested, as it says in the advert, guys, drop us an email at info@eurofootballstar.com or go to the notes at the bottom of the podcast. Now, we're getting back on with Andrea, our breath performance coach. And the next part we're going to come on to was a really interesting point. When we met last week and we had a coffee and we were speaking about getting you on the podcast, was all around expanding lung capacity and looking at the improvements of like red blood cells and being able to do things for longer. I think that would be a huge thing for some of our athletes. So can you maybe just build on that conversation when we were having a coffee the other day?
Yep. So when you do deep breathing, obviously, when we breathe in, we're breathing in oxygen and we're breathing out carbon dioxide. And our red blood cells are made up of oxygen, amongst other things. And then the more you breathe, like the deeper you breathe, it goes right down, obviously, into your lungs, deep down to your diaphragm. And you can actually, there's a way of doing this, which is circular breathing. It's called conscious connected breathing. So the one that I like to practice, it's through the mouth. And basically, the deeper you breathe, the more oxygen you get in your body. And then when you get more oxygen in your body, your red blood cells especially get saturated. So it means you can hold your breath for longer periods of time, which in turn helps your lungs. You expand your lungs with greater lung capacity when you do run around and stuff like that on the pitch, as well as a lot of other things as well.
No, that's really interesting, because that was one of the areas that we used to look at, and I'm going back like probably 15, 20 years ago, and there was all these different studies on how you can saturate, your bloods with the oxygen, but like in a nutshell, it's breathing and being able to breathe properly. And I think there's a lot more research and a lot more studies out there now, but just through that, practice of 5 to 10 minutes of different ways of activating your breathing is going to be a game changer. And obviously what we'll do is, for all of our listeners at the end of the podcast, we'll give you the information for Andrea. Now you can reach out to her if anyone is interested to get more information. Now, the big one, and this is a big topic in any sport, but more so in football as well, is we always hear about the last 10 minutes of the game, player can't carry on, he's on the floor or she's on the floor stretching, there's lactic acid building up. So how can we assist with that through breathing? Because it blows my mind on all these different things we can improve just through something as simple as breathing, and if we're breathing properly.
That's right, yeah. It's like I said before, it's the oxygen, basically. So a lot of people, the more stress that they get, the more shallow they breathe, so there's less oxygen in their body. So if they're running around, they're getting gassed. If their red blood cells are saturated with oxygen, obviously that helps our red blood cells, it helps our muscles, the blood goes to our muscles. When we have like the lactic acid buildup, that helps with that as well. So if they are running around on the field and they are exhausted, they've probably just been running around and they've been the shallow breathing, that especially when you're stressed and when you're looking every which way to try and get the ball and pass it and all those sorts of things. It's definitely a thing. So lactic acid buildup especially, but that can be alleviated through breathing as well. But it's got to be, you can do it like we discussed before, off on the sideline, but it's got to be, I believe, a build-up. So you can't just do it once. You've got to do it progressively. So something like this every day, and then maybe or even every second day, and then maybe doing a deeper breath once a week or once a month or however which way, like, depending on where you are, basically. Yeah.
It was really interesting when I was younger and I was going down my journey, and I really started to look at football in a different way, and I was really looking at players individually. And you'll see goalkeepers and they wear goalkeeper gloves, and sometimes they'll have tape on the wrist to keep the gloves on. And you'd see them at the end of the game ripping the tape off. And then something caught my eye about 10, 11 years ago, and I seen an outfield player with tape on his wrist. I'm like, what's he got tape on his wrist for? He's not a goalkeeper. And I discovered there was letters on his wrist. And then further digging, actually discovered players are putting mini objectives on the strapping tape or the boot tape around the wrist.
Yeah, right.
So one of the things that we implement with the professional player pathway is visual reminders to help them to remember to do things on the pitch. And as I said, we always look to value add to our program. And one of the areas that we do is, if you as a player are struggling with remembering to complete your passes properly and not just giving the ball away all the time, one of those things might be F for focus and then P for passing. But I think what would be really, really useful, because there's a lot of downtime in football where players are rolling around on the floor injured, could be stopped for 2 to 3 minutes. I'm thinking now we could have the letter B on that tape around the wrist.
It's an amazing idea.
And breathing. And just teaching the players for that 30 to 60 seconds, like you done with the activation with us in the room. And I'm sure there's people doing it, but that's one of the things that we'd definitely look to implement. Now, the final one, before we go into a little bit about the intro and who Andrea is, was improve recovery. Is this solely around like just the sleep benefits because of the amount of oxygen you're taking on, or is it other areas as well?
It's mostly just the sleep. So having the breath, like I said, increases all of those areas, like your blood, your sleep, lowers levels of anxiety and all that stuff as well. Now, you probably know, like the more we work out, the more we get stressed, all the things that are happening, they're not going to help us with recovery. So being able to have a good mindset, you know, looking after that lactic acid, like stretching, all those other things, but using breath as well to help us to then sleep. Like it's a holistic approach. It's not just the one thing. Yeah. So it needs to be a number of factors to help with that. Yeah.
No, that's really good. Now, a little bit of an intro of you, because we skipped over that at the start, but I always like to get into the main content, and so the users are, the listeners are actually gaining something straight from the off and learning. But we'll just spend a few minutes just talking a little bit of you. So you grew up in Brisbane, in Queensland.
Yeah.
And school, what school did you attend?
St. Rita's.
St. Rita's. So we did touch on this. So my daughter actually did attend St. Rita's for a couple of years. She loved the school there. We just moved her on just due to her sport and commitments. So your experience in school, I know when I went to school, a lot of people know my backstory. I enjoyed school in some parts. I didn't like it in some parts. I experienced bullying when I was younger. I grew out of that and managed to learn how to deal with it. What was your school and life like? Did you have a good time in school? Did you love it? Did you hate it?
I was not a massive academic. I was a sporty kid. I just wanted to play every sport under the sun, which is why I love coming to talk to you, because I played soccer as a kid, obviously not at a premier level, but I loved it. It was awesome. So I played every sport under the sun, music, all that. But yes, like probably majority of people, unfortunately, I was bullied. I think it started around like 7 or 8 or something like that. And then it kind of continued. Not so bad in high school, but it was still there. But girls are a little bit more, calculated in their bullying when they get to teens. It's not as obvious. But if I had have known something like breathing or something like that I could have implemented when I was a kid, and I've got a young daughter as well, and we actually breathe together. I do lots of stuff with her and just touch base with her mental health all the time, because it's something that's pretty near and dear to my heart, which is why I went off to learn and study, as we'll probably touch on, and all that sort of stuff. So bullying was not great, but having to move through that, and we all get over it in one way or another, but we're still, everyone kind of, I remember this when this happened, and you just don't forget stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And I think for our listeners, especially the parents or any of the players who are listening, if anyone does go through any of that, it's good to know that this breath work could help you, and also maybe give you the courage to maybe have a chat with mum and dad and just explain a little bit about the situation. Because I think when I look back with bullying in school, it would have been good to have the confidence to do it. And I think maybe, again, if I would have been lucky enough to have the breath work when I was going through high school and dealing with some of this, it would have been good. Now, rolling on from school, you went into the army.
I did, yeah.
I like this. So this is very David Goggins-esque, Navy SEAL style.
No.
So how did you end up to get into the army, and what did you do in the army?
Like I said, I was always very active. I didn't want to go to uni. I didn't want to be like everybody else at school. I just wanted to do something active. I wanted to obviously serve, which is why a lot of people join. I wanted a role where I could be out and about, moving around, doing active things as opposed to being sort of stuck behind a desk. So I joined as a truck driver to start with. So I drove all over the country, and Darwin, Adelaide, Sydney, Melbourne, everywhere, Townsville a lot. So I did that for 3 or so years, nearly 4 years. And then I went to military police after that. So I did a pretty much similar job to what normal sort of general duties police would do, but only more so looking after defence members on defence land. So that's what I did in the army.
Very good.
Yeah.
And then rolling on from the army, you then become a bit of an entrepreneur, and you're going down that journey now, and you become a breath performance coach. How did you first stumble upon the breath performance and work?
Yeah, that's a funny story. Not funny, but interesting, I guess. When I got out of the army, I was so lost. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I loved sport and being active, and I loved everything to do with the mind. So again, I did psychology. Well, I didn't say, but I did a psychology degree as well, because I wanted to find out what makes people tick and how people work. And, even in the army, there's lots of pros and cons, as you can imagine, in an environment like that. So all of that happened. And then when I finished up, I was like, I'm ready to move on, but I just didn't know where to go. And I did hit rock bottom. as you can imagine, I was in almost 17 years, so all of my adult life basically. And then moving out of that, I just want to try everything, which most people when they start out in this work want to help themselves. So they've got mental health issues, which I did have, amongst a lot of other things. I'm like, how am I going to help myself be better and stronger and, you know, more empowered, as we've discussed? So going to see a psychologist, which I've done, and all these other healing modalities, and breathwork was one of them. So I actually went to like a festival once, and I did it, and my whole body, because I did a deep breath activation, and my whole body tensed up, and I was like, whoa, I've got a lot of stuff I need to deal with. But there was like a hidden secret in that as well. I was like, I need to do more of this, and I want to learn how to do this because it affected me massively. And I was like, I could do this for so many other people for a variety of reasons. And that's kind of how I got into it. So I went and studied and did courses and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, that's where I am.
That's amazing. I think as well, I'm just thinking out the box a little bit, but not only to benefit our players, but I think like mums and dads who are out there listening in as well, if they've got, you know, stresses going on, which everyone does with work and with life in general, this can be something we're going to touch on. Now, guys, we're just about to break for our second advertisement, and we're going to be back with myself and the wonderful breath performance coach, Andrea Bulow. Stay with us, guys, and enjoy our next advertisement.
Hey everyone, we are coming around every major city in Australia over the next 12 months. We have got free objective football testing going on, guys. It's for boys and girls aged 10 all the way through to 18 years of age. The objective testing is quite simple. We'll put you through our 6 tests and I'll give you your results, physical, technical and tactical. And also, we're going to choose 16 winners to join us on an all expenses paid trip to Europe in 2024 and also 2025. Guys, what have you got to lose? Nothing. It's free to sign up, you get free objective testing, and you'll get a free feedback, and maybe you'll be joining me at the Santiago Bernabeu in 2024 or 25.
Hi everyone, this is the Raymond Wood podcast. We're back for our final section with the breath performance coach, Andrea Bulow. Now, Andrea, we just touched on a little bit just before the advert, a little bit about your intro and growing up in Brisbane and going to St. Rita's, going in the army, and then getting into the breath performance coach. You did touch a little bit. I'd love to touch on a little bit more detail around the degree in psychology and how you think that benefits you going into the breathing side of things as well.
Oh gosh. Yeah. So as I stated before, I wanted to learn psychology because I wanted to learn more about myself, learn more about others. Now, obviously we went into a lot of deep psychology stuff, like, you know, schizophrenic type sort of stuff, which is obviously not related to this. But using it all ties in. So breathwork, mindset is psychology basically. Like your mindset, your psychology, moving into things is it all ties in basically. It's hard to explain, but like I said before, the better you can breathe, the better your mindset is. And then learning obviously about the psychology as well and how that ties into it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's good. And I think it's funny that I did with coaching and hopefully the players do as well, a certain pathway you go down. Like we talk about our pro player pathway, but it's like you learn all these things to get to that end junction and go, this is the outcome and this is what I now want to run with. And it's really interesting that you can see all the different elements of your life we've only touched on for maybe half an hour, but our culmination to you having a passion and being able to deliver this amazing sort of product, if you like, and service, just to be able to teach people. Now, I did notice you've got a couple of advertisements online and you do things like classes at the park and places like Stafford and Brisbane. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how long it goes for and what's the benefits of attending one of them sessions if one of our listeners want to come along?
Yeah, so they're just, I run them down in Stafford, like you said, in the park there, every second week, so every second Saturday morning. And it's more of a relaxation type breathwork, that one. So it's just helping people. It's a lot of introductory sort of work for a lot of people who haven't actually done breathing before. And yeah, it's just as I stated, so you go down, you lay down, and I just kind of tune into the people at where they're at. So if people want to do more relaxing, I might implement more nasal breathing. Obviously, I put music on. Like, it's really nice because it's in nature, so it's very, very grounding for people as well, with all the birds and all that sort of stuff, which is really nice. But I just run that for everybody. So if people who are interested in the local area, like, anyone can come down. And then obviously I do more on top of that as well for different people wanting more like one-on-one stuff and that kind of thing.
Now, we also touched base, and I didn't really go into too much detail, and I'll probably surprise you with it all now whilst we're on the podcast, but we do a monthly meeting with all of the players and families, mums and dads who are on our programme, and we do what's called a monthly Pro Player Zoom meeting, and we bring different people on once a month. It's the first Friday of every month, and people can specialise in things like coaching, specific areas of football. It could be breathing, it could be sleep. So we're going to get you on, hopefully, on one of our next Pro Group Zoom meeting monthlies, and I think we're going to aim to get you on for our October show.
Yeah, cool.
Which
awesome.
is coming up in a few weeks.
Definitely.
So anyone who's on our professional player pathway, you're going to get access to Andrea, and we're going to get access to her for an hour. And the plan is as well, if Andrea can give us the time, we're going to try and implement Andrea a little bit more regular into the program, and maybe add it in as a value add to the program as well, because I've seen the benefits of it myself, and I've read a lot of the research. So for those people who are part of our program, you're going to get access to that. For those guys who are interested in things like the professional player pathway, again, all of our information and details are in the notes below. Now, just to probably finish off the podcast and some of the key takeaways, and I've just blown away by how much we've covered in 30-40 minutes already, but some of the key takeaways for me is, like, one of the big things is like lowering stress levels. Like, if we can do that to players before, during or post the game, it's only going to really, really, really benefit and help them. One of the other things as well is a big thing that we see, and believe it or not, it's not necessarily in the girls, it's more in the boys' game, is confidence.
Yeah.
And having the confidence to express themselves on the pitch, and having those moments now where if we can try and educate the players to breathe in those moments when there is opportunities to have a rest and to get that red blood cells. But for you, would you recommend, like, this was something you said, it's got to be something that we do daily, but do players need to get carried away with this where they've got to do 60 minutes a day of it? No. Or can it be something simpler than that?
Yeah, of course. Like, you don't even have to do it every day if you don't want to. It's like, you wake up in the morning and sometimes you feel a bit more like, oh, I need to relax. So you can do something like that. And sometimes you might feel like you don't want to. Like, it's like going to the gym, like, maybe not for athletes, but for regular people, like, they don't want to go to the gym because they're so exhausted. So they don't go to the gym and have a rest day. So you don't have to do it, and you definitely don't have to do it for like 60 minutes. When I talk about those ones, that's for more, like, you really need like a timeout. Like, if you were to go to City Cave and do a float for like 30 minutes or something like that, like really just getting super, super relaxed. But you don't have to do that. And the awesome thing with breathing is obviously everyone breathes, so everyone can do this themselves. So 2 minutes, 5 minutes, like, that's great. Even a couple of times a week,
It's funny you touched on them floats, and I've done them floats in the City Caves before, and I really like them. But one of the things I notice as well is when you do them, I find them rooms to be very, the air doesn't come across very good to me, and it's very hard to breathe in them rooms sometimes. Is that, obviously, it seems like a no-brainer, but is that something that you probably, when we're practicing the breathing, we are outdoors and we aren't, stood next to a motorway where, there's fresh air, and is that an important one to you, or it doesn't necessarily matter?
To breathe in good environments versus, I mean, ideally, you'd want to. You don't want to be deep breathing on a highway, like. But I mean, it's common sense, like you say. But it's, even like we spoke about the other day about ice baths, like the importance of breathing when you're in an ice bath. Because first thing you do when you get in an ice bath, right? It's like, oh my god, and people, especially through their mouth, like, because that's people think in their mind, like, I need to get as much, like, oxygen in my body, like, as quickly as I can, but you're actually more better suited to breathe through your nose, which we didn't say, which is activating your parasympathetic nervous system, which is really that out of fight or flight and into that relaxed, like, just to. And
I'm glad you said that, because that's what we were going to finish on.
Sweet, sorry.
So talking about, like, there's a lot of experts out there, and this guy's nickname is like the Iceman, and he's renowned for getting an ice cold water as Wim Hof.
Yeah.
But I think his message gets a little bit lost. I think if really you actually realise what he does, for me, he's more the breath man than the ice man, because it's always about breathing. And I've done some of his breathing work via YouTube, and as an out of body experience one day when I'd done like a full 25 minutes, it was so strange and surreal. But then like for the next 2-3 days, I felt like I was on such a high.
We didn't even discuss that. That's another whole area. But yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
But just on that one, and like with Wim Hof and some of his methods and that, and you've just touched on that fight or flight, I want to finish off with that area. So can you build on that parasympathetic, hopefully I said that right, and how that can benefit players? Because that is a big thing for players, is that fight or flight issue.
Yeah, so it's so common now. Like even for everybody, if you live, especially in a city, anywhere really, like there's so much condensed energy. And what I mean by that's like so much stress. Everyone's so stressed all the time, driving to work, there's traffic, the kids, school drop off, like, you know, work, like everything. So the more time, like, and that's just one aspect. And then there's also, we won't get right into it, but like you said, the deep stuff, like having that deep breath work for out of body stuff that touches on more of the trauma. So the bullying and all those sorts of things, which result in a trigger. So there's so many different ways we can be put into that fight or flight. So it's the trigger, it's the, you know, this happened, I'm stressed and whatever. And then what happens, like I said before, you know, your shoulders go up and up and up, you get more stressed, you're like, you know, you contract because you're like, oh my God, I'm in fight or flight, like I don't feel safe. But doing breath work, again, it brings you back to presence, it grounds you, brings you back into your body, opens up your chest, like, and then really gets you out of that fight or flight. And like we said, the parasympathetic. So that basically, there's like the different nervous systems, so sympathetic and parasympathetic is getting into that state where you don't necessarily, or like you don't know you're in that, it's the autonomic system. So it's, I'm breathing, my blood's pumping, you know, my liver's functioning, my stomach's digesting food. So that's that system. So we're not consciously aware of that. And that's where the breathing comes in, because it's something that we can actually alter in our body. That's part of that system. So if we can tap into that, especially with something like ice baths, then you can be in a relaxed state in a freezing cold temperature, which is not something that the body wants to do because it goes into fight or flight. And that's just another example. So
No, that's good. And yeah, it's one of the big things I've realised. I religiously every morning, I've got an amazing gym in Brisbane, a friend of mine runs and owns, called Function Well. And we're so lucky, we've got like infrared saunas, conventional saunas, steam rooms, but they've got the ice baths, and they've got the magnesium pools, and it's just a great way to start your day. I come out of there feeling relaxed, ready to go, activated for the day. And that was one of the big things that I discovered, that the ice bath, all the benefits the ice bath does to lowering your temperature of your body and starts the flow of your red blood cells more. But then it's the breathing. You cannot not breathe when you're in an ice bath, because you're like straight away get you. And the first thing, it's really strange that your body automatically just takes over as it starts breathing for you. And then, I think there's more benefits to the breathing than actually getting any ice bath.
And the other thing, which I'm not sure if you're aware of, but, you know, that's why your fingers and your toes go numb and stuff, because all that blood gets drawn up to your vital organs. So that's, your body goes, we are freezing, but we need to protect the lungs, the heart, that like all of the organs. That's why your fingers and your toes get really cold, because the blood's rushing. The blood's not there, it's all in the center. And then how do you fix that and how do you help that? Through your breathing. But the other thing I was going to say as well, which you didn't mention, putting yourself in any of those, the players might want to know as well, putting yourself in any of those so-called like arduous conditions, like a sauna, it's not great, it's super hot. An ice bath, it's still relaxing, but it's not normal to be in 60, 70 degrees, right? So the more people can put themselves in those types of areas and those types of positions, it's a safe area, but it's like a sense of hardship. And this is something that I obviously discovered in the army at doing a lot of things. That's why you train really hard, because when you go to war, it's called train hard, fight easy. That was one of like the mottos, and that's applicable to a lot of different areas. But if you can put players like, let's go do an ice bath, or let's go do a deep breathing now. So then the more difficult stuff they can do, by the time they get on the pitch, it's easy. Right?
And that's one of the things I've discovered. The more I'm able to put my body in a stressful situation in the morning, the less likely I'm going to make a knee-jerk reaction in the afternoon because someone's done something wrong in the office, or something that I appear to be, that's gone disastrously long doesn't become an issue because I can deal with that stress. And I think if we pull it all back in with the player focus, is that I think the message from this is with the breathing. I think the key takeaway, if we can teach players to breathe in those moments when they need to and bring the focus back in, be able to lower stress levels, be able to get all the benefits of things like improved recovery and expand lung capacity, this is a win-win.
Yeah.
So a big thank you for joining us. And if people want to get in touch with you and find out more about you, we will put your notes in the podcast notes below. But also, have you got like a website or a social media handle? Where can people reach out to you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram and Facebook, Breath Performance Coach, and then also breathperformancecoach.org is my website.
Awesome. So all of our listeners, a big thank you for tuning in. This has been an insightful podcast. I've really enjoyed doing this one with Andrea. I'm pretty sure we're going to get Andrea back on again. So a big thank you from the Raymond Wood podcast, and we are excited to bring you episode 3 very, very soon. Peace out. Namaste.